Can you just give me an example? Because I can imagine, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what does that mean to develop a test that includes and incorporates cultural context? So what is missing and what needs to be
In
there?
fact, I'll make it real simple.
Okay.
How does that culture or that cultural difference or that cultural privilege in the test, how does it bias or how does it discriminate against African American children? The primary medium is through the language.
Okay.
What I find is that African American children are struggling because they don't understand the vocabulary being used on the test. For example, I evaluate your son, hypothetically. He scores below basic in math, but he's really proficient. So if he's really proficient, how did he score below basic? Because the words used in the math questions were so unfamiliar to your son, so confusing that he couldn't properly comprehend the question, and so he got it wrong. Had he been able to understand the question, the score would have went up significantly. I would argue that 25% at least, 25% of the variance in standardized test scores is due to a child's ability to understand what they're being asked.
Okay. All right. I got that. I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Yes.
Isn't that the responsibility of the teacher to make sure that they understand and comprehend that language?
It is. But the research shows us what? Teachers tend to teach down to African American children because you have to understand 93% of America's teachers are middle-class white females. When they come to school at 7 o'clock in the morning, they do not lose or leave their bias in racism at the front door of the school. And the research shows us that white teachers do have a bias towards African American children. They're more likely to refer them for special ed than an African American teacher. They're more likely to hold low expectations of what they can achieve and what they can't achieve. And politically and economically, we know that the black communities get the least experienced teachers, the most underpaid teachers. So when you look at it, even if a teacher doesn't hold bias against an African American child, by virtue of her working conditions and by virtue of her inexperience, he or she is going to suffer and receive a lower quality of education, which reveals itself in the test scores.
Okay, so now we know and we understand why African American children, and we're talking specifically about boys in this case, but I'm labeling young black children special ed or special needs is an issue because, again, playing devil's advocate, I would say, well, if they have special needs, those who actually do, and they're getting more attention or special attention, isn't
that should be a good thing?
Is right.
Okay, there's a concept that I refer to as academic crippling. When you provide children with supports that they don't need, which in turn prevents them from developing their full potential because they was never given an opportunity to show what they can do. So for example, let's say you're an athlete, okay? But you only get to play 2 minutes out of every game. You're a better player than the starting point guard. But because you never get enough time to reveal what you can truly do, you stay on that bench because you never get the opportunity. Special ed crushes the opportunity of African American children because it gives them crutches as opposed to making them show what they're really capable of doing. And going back to something I said earlier, the diagnoses are not objective. They're opinions.
Okay.
So if I say your son has a learning disability, that is not a fact. That is only an opinion. Okay, you go to another psychologist, it's a learning disability. You go to another psychologist, it's ADHD. You go to another psychologist, Dr. Umar Johnson, and I'm going to tell you what it really is. Your child doesn't have a specific learning disability. He is because the conversations about students are not being held in a confidential manner. Sometimes teachers, and I'm a former school administrator also, and I've had to get on my staff. Sometimes teachers are too non-professional in the school environment. You're around children. You cannot be talking about which child's father got locked up for selling drugs. You can't be talking about which child's mother is on crack or who's homeless. These things are guarded by privacy laws that are not being obeyed.
Do the teachers not know this, or they just
Many
don't
of
care?
them don't.
Okay.
You'll be surprised. One of the things I do for schools is I teach educational law, intro to ed law, intro to special ed law. You'd be surprised what teachers don't know. They don't know about the privacy law. They don't know that you can't discuss. You're a teacher, I'm a teacher.
Right.
You cannot discuss your students with me unless I have an academic need to know. So if your student knows medicine, I'm his science teacher, I have an academic need to know that he's on a medicine because he might got to go to the bathroom, might get thirsty, might go to sleep. But if you're talking about your student to a teacher in another class or a teacher in another school or an assistant principal that isn't responsible for that child, you're breaking the law. And you can lose your certification for doing that. It's illegal. But it's also illegal for teachers to tell parents that their kids need medicine for ADHD. Teachers cannot give psychological or psychiatric advice. They do it every day.
Do they?
Yes.
Really?
Remember, the school to Ritalin pipeline is fueled by the classroom teachers.
Really?
It's not the parents running down to the psychiatrist. It's the teachers putting pressure on the parents. Your son needs this medicine in order to learn. And if he doesn't get it, he can't come back, which is also illegal because you cannot deny a child their education for a parent's choice not to medicate. Some of our teachers are out of line. What are you doing giving out mental health advice? And I teach this in my law program, and I know of teachers who have lost their license to teach because they were giving out expert medical advice. So your question would be, if I'm a teacher and I see a kid who's too hyper or they got some issues, what can I tell a parent if they need help? Tell them that your child is having issues that I think require further psychological investigation. You see, but the minute you get specific, the minute you say he has ADHD, the minute you say he needs medicine, you've overstepped your professional boundary.